Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nello Reads channel. Our first pro-revenge story of the day comes from DJ Duke of Spook. When your ex tells you to move out while she's on a work trip because the guy she cheated on you with is moving in, you get very creative moving out. I did this to an ex who asked me to move out while she was on a work trip and told me she was coming back with her new boyfriend. We were still together when she left. I got these little noisemakers, battery-powered ones the size of a quarter, that emit sounds at just the right volume that you aren't sure if you really heard it. They're so quiet that two people could be sitting in an average-sized room, and while one can barely hear it, the other wouldn't hear a thing. They last ages and fit perfectly in light fixtures and in wall outlets. I got a box of 20 of them for like $100 on eBay, and got so creative all over the house, her car. I even hid them in a boat her father got her. Rich family, and she grew up sailing. Now these little B-words make a noise at complete random intervals. Could be minutes, could be hours, could take a whole day. They cycle noises like children laughing, a dying breath as they called it, a whistle, scratching noises, some other ones I can't remember, but you get the idea. It was so unpredictable, it was near impossible for someone to just figure it out. Months go by, I get a new place, and get my life back together. Now, we had a few friends in common, and one of them I kept up with. They were kinda sour about how she ended things, but they had grown up together and kept up the friendship, loosely talking and catching up on occasion. I never really talked about her, but one day we get to talking, and he's wanting to prank some friends on a camping trip, so I tell him about the noisemakers. As I'm telling him about them, he slowly starts making this face, like he's gradually losing his crap. He got this huge grin on his face and asks me, "You put those in X's house, didn't you?" And when I admit it, he starts laughing hysterically. Turns out for a while, they had both heard things, and sometimes only one would hear them, which gave the illusion that something really effed with them was going on in their heads at different times. They couldn't figure it out, and eventually, he wanted out completely. And having run down all the crazy list of crap people who are hearing voices would think, he ended it believing that he had been infected with some brain worm the government was putting in vaccines or something like that. It was amazing. I hadn't expected to hear anything about it, and I rode that train for weeks. When it went away, I got another hit of that high. She moved out, told her parents she didn't want the house and to give it to her brother or sell it, and wouldn't tell them why. I always tell people who ask about her that I hold no grudge, and don't tell them about the part where I totally effed with her so bad I overshot the got her backstage, and just hit the blissful state of satisfied with my work. My wife knows the story by heart because it's her favorite one to tell. This might be the best pro-revenge story I've ever read. Like, how do you break up with somebody well out of town, get a new boyfriend, and tell your old one to move out before you get back? Anyone who does that definitely deserves to have these noisemakers put up in their house. She's honestly lucky it wasn't worse. Our next story comes from W. Fogel 97. School expelled me for mom's anger. We sued the county and caused a reform. So, I have a really bad leg. I've had 13 surgeries, long story, and had just started at a new school. After the first 3 weeks, I had to go in for another procedure on my leg. Not that big a deal to me, I've been here before. Upon my return, I had documentation of my restrictions, as well as special amenities that were required. The big three were that I needed extra time to get from class to class, must have someone to escort me, and needed unrestricted access to the elevator. All of these got me recurring problems, such as constant harassment by teachers and security about me being in the halls during class time, and why my cousin was out too. He was filling the role as my escort as I have anxiety problems and we had the same classes. These first two were annoying, but easy enough to deal with. The real issue was the elevator, as I was told multiple times that for security issues, I couldn't have a personal key due to it sharing the same functionality with the interior door keys. I would never have had any issues with this, as I was told there would always be someone on the same floor as my classes to open the elevator for me, but that of course was untrue about 75% of the time. The lack of elevator access meant that I was always stuck in the halls when other students were going class to class, and was consistently late due to having to wait for someone to come by and open the door for the elevator. This also meant that I would sometimes be stuck waiting through the entire lunch period, and due to my absences, couldn't afford to simply go to lunch after. After about 3 weeks of this, I was tired of not getting to eat lunch, so I did one of the stupidest things I could have attempted, and tried to use the stairs. For context, I was not on crutches. I was on a full-blown walker. About halfway down the landing, I fell. Hard. As lunch was letting out, one of my friends found me, got someone to help pick me up, and carried me to the office. Another one of my friends went to find my other cousin. The one who normally escorted me wasn't there due to being sick. So I was without escort because I didn't want a stranger escorting me. When I get to the office, they get me to calm down enough to give them my mother's number. Now, my mother is quite hot-tempered, but can keep a level head normally. When she heard I fell, she was there in record time. When she got there, she immediately asked what happened. I told her I didn't want to miss lunch again, so I tried to use the stairs. Big mistake, as that set off a SAR bomba-sized explosion. She immediately turned around and demanded for the principal and VP to get their butts in there ASAP. As soon as the principal and VP walked in, she started berating them in a fashion not suitable for most adults to hear, let alone kids. When the VP made an offhand remark about my condition, my mother was swarmed by local sheriffs that provided security for the school's entrances and office as she physically went after the VP. We were escorted out, and after looking at the file and realizing my cousin and I have the same address, they figured out that I didn't actually live there. Now, my grandmother's address was listed as she looked after me after I left school up until around 8 p.m. She was also raising my cousin after an issue between her and my aunt. They used this as grounds to expel me and told her that I can be some other school's problem now. I was then enrolled at the school near my house and had to have yet another surgery to repair the damage that was done as a result of my fall and redo the work of my previous procedure. I had gotten multiple statements from teachers as well as my doctors, and my parents were moving forward with a lawsuit naming the VP, principal, and the county school board. We were contacted by a lawyer who had won multiple cases against our school board, some of which went to the state Supreme Court, and he told us he would take our case pro bono. He was getting tired of going against the board and thought a case like this would be what it would take to fix their crap. Fast forward 9 months, and I was walking out of court with a settlement to cover all my procedures, as well as a written confirmation that the school would be going through a complete administrative overhaul, and that the principal and VP would be let go and have their administrative credentials revoked in our state. My new school was informed day one of my medical requirements and my need for a personal elevator key by the superintendent and the head of the State Board of Education. So that's where the story ends. We don't know how things went at the new school, but probably much better. As for the story itself, although I don't think the mom should have tried to physically go after the VP, I kinda get it. The way OP was treated, in my opinion, was ridiculous, and I'm glad he got justice for it. At the same time, trying to climb the stairs was a bad move, but hey, it all worked out in the end. The third story comes from an anonymous poster. So I recently had a run-in with UPS. I posted this to Petty Revenge, but it got removed, and I was told to post it here. Enjoy. UPS smashed a nearly new MacBook that I sent them. I asked them nicely to pay me back for it, and they arsed about, blaming me, blaming my packaging, saying it was impossible they damaged it, etc. I was able to prove my packaging was flawless, and get a statement from the Apple Store that I took it to say it was damaged caused by being dropped or thrown. I could also prove it worked when I sent it. They weren't interested and messed me about for weeks, sending me from pillar to post, even threatening to make me pay interest on customs charges, which I wasn't liable for, as the laptop was smashed on arrival and thus worthless at import. So I took it to small claims. They hired a lawyer who sent me letters saying they contested it and would go for full fees and so on if I lost. I went for it anyway. I did law stuff in university, so I knew the basics, and I thought my case was pretty clear cut. I won. I won my costs back, plus extra, plus interest. But they ignored the court order and did not pay. Now, this laptop was originally being sent to my beloved mother-in-law. She asked me to help her with the problem, as UPS were also seriously harassing her for the customs fees. However, very unexpectedly, before I could resolve it, she passed away. It was the last thing she ever asked me to do for her. I loved that woman more than pretty much any human on this planet. She was my mother, my best friend, and my mentor. Taking down UPS was now my personal vendetta. I researched my options. I could have taken the usual, more conservative legal routes to reclaim my money, but no, F them. I don't care about the money anymore. I want revenge, I want drama, I want karmic justice. I went to the high court. I got a writ of control. I, of course, added on more fees and more interest. I then hired the most aggressive bailiff firm I could. I trusted the awful processes and attitude of UPS to mean that they would ignore the letters and actually get a visit. They did. The bailiffs rock up at UPS headquarters and explain the situation. UPS refuses to pay, so the bailiffs start listing goods. Security tries to make them leave, the office manager tries to bully them out. Obviously, no Fs are given by the bailiffs, and they crack on with their jobs. I wasn't allowed the body cam footage, but they did send me a detailed report. The final conclusion is copied from it below. Calls were then made to the accounts manager, who arrived in a hurry. As no payment was forthcoming from them, the agent again explained the removal process and costs involved, and called the office for approval to begin removals. The agent began to seize assets. The finance director then arrived on the scene. He was not happy at all about the attendance, but ultimately agreed to pay a voluntary payment in full form from his personal account in order to stop the removal. I know it's a drop in the ocean to UPS, but I got more than double what I originally asked for to replace the laptop. They would have had to pay even more on top of fees to the bailiffs. I reckon it cost them at least 3 times more than the original claim in the end. But mostly, I just enjoy the mental image of the flustered finance director and his impotent rage, having to pay his own money to stop the heavies from taking desktop computers and fancy pot plants and other things out of their swanky head office lobby. Perfect timing on this story because I literally just ordered a MacBook. It just shipped and it looks like it will be UPS who's delivering it. Now, I don't imagine I'll have as many issues as OP has, but I know who I'll be contacting if I do. Our next story of the day is from WordRoll. When someone tries to get you fired, but you have a reverse card. This incident blew up in March of 2021, in the middle of lockdown. It would probably be recognizable to people I work with, hopefully they don't read this thread. It's a story about someone whose ambition was bigger than their ethics and the law, and it comes back to bite them. At the time, I was working as a manager in a mid-sized business. While I was there, I was assigned a new member to my team. I'll call her Evil. Evil was in her mid-20s and was fresh out of college. She was the kind of person who could talk your ear off about all of her ideas and plans and what she was working on, but never really seemed to have anything to show for it. When I talked to her clients complaining that she wasn't getting back to them, she would always have an excuse about how difficult they were, how snowed under she was, and how she had written an email but it must have gotten lost in spam, so on and so forth. Basically, nothing was ever her fault. It got to the point where after one of our monthly meetings, I called her in and explained that if she couldn't get her tasks done, she needed to let us know so we could help delegate resources to make sure things weren't slipping through the cracks. I'll admit, I was pretty direct. Her performance was impacting the whole team, and my job was literally to keep the team on track. I get that people can be under pressure, there can be stuff going on at home which impacts work, and that sometimes people need a bit of help. But if every time I ask about a project, you say, yep, everything's good, I've got it under control, and then it all falls apart, and your only response is to blame the client, we have a problem. I explained that I wasn't going to start formal performance management or anything like that, but from now on, I'd like her to check in with me on Monday mornings for 10 minutes to go over objectives for the week and to check if she needed support with any of her clients. I know it isn't fun to be micromanaged, so I tried to keep these check-ins short and mostly just offer assistance on stuff. She clearly hated my guts though, and apparently was hatching her own ProRevenge. Now, part of my role included use of a purchasing card, which wasn't in my name, but I had access to. I was given the card to basically make small purchases for the office or spend up to $500 on clients. The card was kept in an office I shared with another team manager where we could both access it when we needed it. One day, I get a call from accounts asking about a few abnormal purchases on the card. A Photoshop subscription, a couple of Uber Eats orders, an HBO subscription, and so on. I say I don't know anything about them, and they should check with the other team manager. Apparently, the other team manager didn't know anything about them either, because after the weekend, I get called into the big boss's office. After my colleague and I had denied involvement, accounts had started calling Adobe and Uber and stuff to find out where the transactions were coming from. They said that not only were the accounts in my name, they were registered to an email address with my name in it too. I can't describe what it felt to be in that meeting. I felt physically sick. I couldn't work out what was happening. I was so shocked, I didn't know what to say. It felt like I was about to get fired, and I couldn't understand how that was even possible. The director was going on about how access to the card was a privilege, and that I had signed an agreement about appropriate use, and so on and so forth. I denied that I had been using it inappropriately, and the boss listened, but I could tell he wasn't that convinced. To be honest, in my head, I was gaslighting myself and worrying that I had somehow saved the card in Google and maybe my wife had accidentally used it or something. It was terrible, and I found myself apologizing and saying, I don't know how this happened. I assure you that I know that none of these expenses are appropriate uses of company funds. There must be some kind of mistake. Can I please have the details and look into it? And so on. When I finally got out of that office, job still intact, barely, Evil was waiting for me at my office door. She was grinning from ear to ear and sweetly explained she had been waiting for our morning meeting. I told her something had come up and we'd need to do the meeting tomorrow, and she said, "Oh, will you be in tomorrow?" Confused because I didn't know I was in a ProRevenge thread at the time, I just replied, "Yes, why would I not be in tomorrow?" And she just sipped her tea and said, "Oh, no reason," turned around and went back to her desk. Something felt off, but I was still worrying about what had happened with the boss. So I spent the next couple of hours calling my wife, calling Adobe, and doing the same legwork that accounts had done. It became very obvious that someone had been using my name and the company card to spend a bunch of money online. Had I been hacked or something? Personal info on the dark web and these hackers just really wanted Photoshop and Wendy's delivered? It was actually the Uber Eats that was her undoing. After getting on the phone and talking through what had gone on, and obviously giving my name for the account and everything, the fellow on the phone told me where the food had been delivered. It was our city, which made me rule out straight away any notion of my data being sold online or something. Now, I was suspicious and pissed. I don't like to think the worst of people, but now I was. Listening to my gut, I pulled up Evil's employee information and checked her address. I pulled it up on Google Maps, dropped a pin on her place, and then looked for the address Uber Eats had given me. It was the corner of her effing block. I was furious. When she left work for the day, I got IT to give me access to her laptop. Sure enough, when I opened up her email, under her listed accounts was the previous email account that had my name in it. There were some things she had been smart about. The IP address she had been using was the office, which could have tied back to me. She had even had the food delivered to a different address. She had even made a fake email address with my name. But saving her passwords on a work computer was a mistake. I called the boss that night and explained what I had found, and kept the IT guy with me to support the fact that I hadn't just logged into her computer and made it all up. The next day, the boss called her into his office and fired her so bad there were red trucks lining up outside the building. When she teary-eyed left his office, I made sure I was standing in the hall sipping a cup of tea. It had gotten cold while I waited for her, but still tasted sweet. I hope she went home that night, because if she did, she would have received some nice goodbye Wendy's delivered by Uber Eats. Paid for on my personal card, of course. Revenge and justice can be the same thing, right? In the end, she was fired, the boss apologized, and we were on good terms when I left in October for a new gig. She never apologized, and I haven't seen her since. The boss decided not to get the police involved, and neither did I, as I didn't want the hassle. While reading this story, as soon as I saw Evil use the card on Uber Eats, I just knew that's how she was gonna get caught. Like, come on. If you're gonna break the law, you at least have to be smart about it. I'm not saying you should. Please don't. I just don't know what she could have been thinking. And honestly, she's so lucky that the police didn't get involved. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and I will see you in the next video.